Well, I think it's time to start. And I wanted to kind of revisit something we were talking about on Monday. And that is, I was showing you sources and how to document sources and all of that stuff about peer-reviewed sources. And what do I have here? Wikipedia. And for most purposes at college level, they don't like you to use wiki. Wikipedia is
Worst source ever.
worst source ever. Why is that?
It's because the information isn't really reliable.
Yeah.
My teacher, he said he once tried to find like this person that was on a source from Wikipedia, like the links to all the sources that they get their information. He searched forever. He never found the dude. Like, and it was like then he couldn't use that source in that paper. So yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's all true. Polka, you were shaking your head in agreement. And I think that the information is unreliable, and in part because this is like easily hacked. You can kind of come in here and change what you want. That's the whole point of a wiki. And early on in the information age, somebody had this idea that we'd build this encyclopedia via wikis, and that experts would weigh in and they would build this knowledge and have an encyclopedia that would be better than anything, better than Britannica. And so anyway, whoa, we got a new participant here. Mackenzie.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm trying to keep the attendance accurate. There it is. But I did want to show you something about Wiki, and all of that stuff is true. Anybody can come in here. But I wanted to kind of show you the bottom of this. I need a longer cord. This is a wired mouse. I'm not used to that. I haven't done that for a decade. But I did want to show you something with the citations. First of all, it's typically, this right here is an endnote, A, B, C, D, and that's why it has that notation and the date of the publication and the page. But bottom line is that typically this is done correctly. All of the other things that might be wrong will be wrong, but typically these are correct. I wanted to kind of point to this one, number 4. Gardner's Art Through the Ages. That's our textbook. And you see it has a hot link to this. But bottom line is, what I wanted to say about this is that if you're having trouble finding sources and you're writing a paper on Hagia Sophia, don't use anything above this. Don't do it. But you can go to some of these places and you might be able to find some information, and typically it's a hot link. And so this is from the church building, blah, 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 blah. And so anyway, this is the this is the source here, and so you can take that information and go do some research yourself. And that's really what I wanted to show you here about Wikipedia. So it's not entirely useless. It might point you in a good direction. And so the sources, you know, Gardner's Art Through the Ages is a peer review. That's why we use it at college level. But at any rate, there's some other books and places and sources you might want to go to. And I'm just saying that because you might want to sniff around and it might be useful. So, was talking about the Hagia Sophia when we were here last, and this time I really want to kind of start looking at Islamic art. And as we knew about the Hagia Sophia, it was a Christian basilica, cathedral. Have any of you guys ever been to the St. Louis Cathedral Basilica?
If I did, I don't remember.
Right? It kind of looks like the Hagia Sophia, doesn't it? Yeah, it's the Catholic cathedral here in town. They call it the new cathedral, although it was built in the 1850s. Because the old cathedral is down underneath the arch, and it's just really not more than a regular church. But at any rate, they used a lot of the architectural style of Hagia Sophia when they put together the cathedral basilica in St. Louis. So if you want to take a look at, I know Medina went and saw Hagia Sophia, and she was like really lucky that way. You can't get to Istanbul, you can go on Lindell Avenue between Kings Highway and Grand and take a look, and it's actually pretty spectacular in its own right. It's not the Hagia Sophia, but you get a really good sense of what that architecture is like. And so nobody talking, okay. The Islamic world. Here we go. We talked about, this is 1500. So look at this. I'm going to take a really good look at this. The pink is former Muslim territories. And you see right here, Spain and Portugal was Islamic. And so it says the capture of Constantinople from the Byzantines in 1453 and the fall of Grenada to the Christians in 1492. So this is Spain, former Islamic area, but look at the rest of this. This is like huge. This is, and you can still find a lot of this map is still actually kind of useful to see where Islam is the predominant religion. And so the Arabian Peninsula, look, it's really pretty much gotten most of India. And that's kind of changed since then too. This what happens in the intermediate, the time between 1500 and today is that Pulkit, if I get this wrong, please correct me, but this became a British colony. It was colonized by the British, and both Islamic and Hindu cultures existed there. Bottom line, after the Second World War, India gained its independence, 1947. British moved out, and there was intense fighting along religious lines. And what they decided was that they would put in here, this area right here, Pakistan, and predominantly Muslim. And on the other side, they had East Pakistan, which is now called Bangladesh, predominantly Muslim. But at any rate, and this green area goes all the way down too. You can go down through Southeast Asia and places like Singapore. Muslim, predominantly Muslim. So anyway, I'm saying this is huge. It's one of the biggest religions. It's right there, up there with Christianity and Judaism. It's one of the big three. And so anyway, it's good to know this. And 1500, if you take a kind of a long view of things, when did Columbus come over to North America? 1492. So this is just barely after Columbus. And this was actually a place where there was still a lot of religious tension between Islam and Christianity, as well as here too. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And I forgot I put this in here.
What is it?
It's about Greece. And I wanted to kind of show you this. It's quick. Sparta was much more than an army of super warriors. And as I was describing the culture in Greece, there was two main centers. There was Sparta and Athens. And the Spartans were much more warrior class, and that's where people like Alexander the Great came from. And the Athenians were much more interested in knowledge and art and architecture and all of that kind of stuff. And so anyway, here's a relief, and these are Spartans. You guys are into Big Ten football teams, Michigan State Spartans. They have a logo that is roughly the shape of this helmet. Anyway. And so what we have here, and I just put this in, I don't want to have to get too deep into it, but it says here that that this myth held up for at least 2.5 millennia as the unmatched warrior city-state where every male was raised from infancy to fight to the death. This view, as ingrained as it is alluring, is almost entirely false. And so what it goes on to say here is why we know that that wasn't really true. But the Spartans, have any of you heard something being described as Spartan? Like you have Spartan living quarters, a Spartan existence? No. Well, if you do, what that means is that these Spartan males were brought up to be tough. And so they did not have a lot of the comforts of provided by a civilization. Like, for instance, they would often sleep outside on the ground, no blanket, toughen them up. Ever since, like when they're little boys, they do that. They make them tough, intense physical training, intense military training, and so on. And so when they say a Spartan existence, that means you don't have all of the creature comforts. You really don't have much of anything. And you're what you would say roughing it. And so anyway, I brought this in, and here are the Spartans in battle. Bottom line, I brought it in part because it's a good indicator. It's a good example of I'm trying to get to share. Come on. Why won't that share? Never mind. Oh, here we go. We'll do that. There we go.
On Zoom, I've been able to click on multiple screen sharing things.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes yeah, and what I got here too, Zoom is part of it, and part of it is I got people at home, and I always want to make sure that they're getting what we get. So anyway, but at any rate, why did I bring this in? It's just another example of how much we are still learning about things that we really thought we knew a lot about. The research is ongoing. We're learning more, and a lot of things that were myths. In this case, 2,500 years, they're doing more and more research and finding out that, hey, we had it wrong. And so I was talking to you the other day about Hagia Sophia, and I want to see if I got any more new people. No, okay. And this is a news story about Turkey's president formally makes Hagia Sophia a mosque. I was telling you about that 2019. It went from being a tourist attraction. And here's another story about Russia trying to intervene in this. They don't really like that idea. But at any rate, a lot of this stuff that we look at is still in the news, period. We have the Spartan or Hagia Sophia. But I do want to move into the Islamic era. Dome of the Rock, looking southwest. And I want to kind of zoom in on part of this because look, mosaics, tile, wonderful, elaborate mosaics all over. Looks like we got some maintenance going on here. That looks like a panel. Looks like they're doing a little roofing here. But one of the most sacred places in Islam, and it's a sacred place in the Christian religion as well in the Jewish religion. This site was is the site where Herod the Great had built his temple back in Roman time. It was called the Great Temple, and it was a Jewish site, and it's a site where people of the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim faiths, they hold it sacred, and a lot, sometimes for the same reasons. And here's the interior, and here's the rock. This is what's inside. This is the actual place. This is in Jerusalem, and this is the Holy Rock. This is a holy place in all three religions. And I want to bring to your attention, again, elaborate mosaics, tiles, ornate patterns. And in fact, it's hard to find any spot that has not been touched with artwork. But as I was saying about the Hagia Sophia, in Islam, they take the second commandment very seriously, and they don't put images of people Sometimes I'll show you some in a minute, and sometimes you'll see a place or two, but for the most part, it is not narrative. It's not a story being told with pictures, although we'll have quotations that will tell a story. And in this wonderful Arabic script here, but never pictures like the crucifixion or the Virgin Mary, or in Islam, no images of the prophet. And so, and the stained glass, all this stuff is just incredibly ornate, incredibly beautiful. And here is looking up through the inside of the dome. And you can see the quotations around the perimeter here. But one of the things that happens in Islamic architecture is that they use the arch that was developed in Roman times, but they kind of put a little bit of a different spin on this too. And a lot of Islamic architecture will have an arch, but it will be made with two different colors of stone. So you get this kind of effect of having alternating white and dark stripes around it. Oh. Whoa, I got a previous, there it is. And you see, it uses the columns developed in Grecian times, and it's got something that looks pretty much like a Corinthian capital. So it draws from these other traditions, and it's put to the Islamic faith. And I want to add to that, the dome, that is a Roman architectural invention. And so they're pulling a lot from the past and the idea of the mosaics, and this is done in accordance with Islamic faith. I want to kind of show you this too. ABC News. How many of you know Christian Amanpour? I hope I can get a. Uh-oh, let me see. Oh, there it is.
I'm standing under the rock where Muslims believe.
Now, let me start this over. But I do have sound. Can you guys hear that at home?
Yes.
Oh,
The
yes,
landscape
good.
of the Bible is as brutal as it is breathtaking. Here, it's easy to imagine the suffering and the patience it took for a family to survive in Abraham's time, and why it's here that God would demand a sacrifice so stark and so unforgiving that he would never again ask anything like it. I'm standing under the rock where Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. And this is home to all three religions, because Jews and Christians believe that this is where God commanded Abraham to bring his son Isaac to sacrifice. Today, this place is marked by the familiar gold dome of the rock that dominates the old city of Jerusalem. And it sits on one of the most contested sites in the world. Even the name of this site is complicated. Jews call it the Temple Mount, while Muslims call
okay.
it.
I'm going to start this over. Thanks,
The
Medina.
landscape of the Bible.
I didn't know you
is-
couldn't see. That's what I'm talking about. To say this.
Here, it's easy to imagine the suffering and the patience it took for a family to survive in Abraham's time, and why it's here that God would demand a sacrifice so stark and so unforgiving that he would never again ask for anything like it.
I'm standing under the rock where Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. And this is home to all three religions, because Jews and Christians believe that this is where God commanded Abraham to bring his son Isaac to sacrifice.
Today, this place is marked by the familiar gold dome of the rock that dominates the old city of Jerusalem.
And it sits on one of the most contested sites in the world. Even the name of this site is complicated. Jews call it the Temple Mount, while Muslims call it Haram al-Farid, or local sanctuary.
On one side is the Western Wall, the holiest site that Jews come to prayer, and nearby, the Christian Church of the Holy Sepulchre. In just 1 square mile, the most revered places of each of the three religions. And this is also the place where the Bible tells us that God had finally demanded too much. Abraham had waited into very old age for the children that God had promised. He had already been told to send his first son, Ishmael, away. Now, only Isaac was left at home.
Abraham, for better or for worse, is usually hearing God's voice. And one day, as the Torah tells us in Genesis 22, God decides to test Abraham. And he says, take your son, your only son, whom you love, and offer him as a sacrifice at the place that I will show you.
God was telling Abraham to kill his own son.
It's so perfect.
I want to show you something here. I just noticed for the first time. Oh, just back 10 seconds.
God
Play.
was telling Abraham to kill his own son.
This is what I wanted to show you. And just saying, you know, this is 2012, that's when this was filmed. This is when these high holy days occurred. 5773. That's the date in the Jewish calendar. Yeah, and there are other calendars as well. We'll talk about that, but we've adopted what was essentially the Roman calendar. And that's the Western tradition. That's a European thing, but at any rate, just showing you, just saying.
It's so perfect. Instead, Jews food and their holidays we could be on Rosh Hashanah. Christians food the same story. Their holidays we could be in Easter. Muslims read the same story in their holidays week.
To this day, the story is commemorated by Muslims all over the world on a holiday called ADAH. The Hassan family are American Muslims living in New Jersey. One son, Yusef, is about the same age Abraham's son would have been, and he's trying to imagine how he would have felt.
He was probably extremely scared at what was going to happen, and he was very worried for his dad because he and his dad was going through a long trouble just getting over the fact that he had to kill his own son. But I'm sure he understood that it coming from a higher power.
For Jews and Christians too, the story of what happened next is the same. Abraham's faith was absolute. He didn't argue with God. He tied up his son and laid him on the rock, and then he drew his knife.
And as the story goes, Abraham literally lifts the knife before God says, Abraham, Abraham, you don't have to do this.
So the son was spared, and a lamb appeared to take his place.
one of the abiding lessons you are meant to learn from Genesis is obedience to
Lamb to the
God.
slaughter, yeah.
That if you are obedient, then in the end you are rewarded.
Muslims believe Ishmael, not Isaac, was the son Abraham was called upon to sacrifice, but the essence of the story is the same across the three religions.
Is it heartbreaking to think that this patriarch, this person who we believe is the father of our religion, was this close to committing murder, killing his son?
I don't know if it's heartbreaking or not, but I know that it's eye-opening and that it's important because Abraham introduces the idea you can kill in the name of God. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that this idea is embedded in these biblical stories. This is not all, kumbaya and we all live in peace and say, oh, you like butterflies and love your children and therefore we can all get along.
And yet the story is not an endorsement of killing in the name of God.
So it's a test. God is testing him. He doesn't really intend for it.
What?
Heck. Did your Wi-Fi go out?
I don't know.
Sometimes.
That's kind of what it looks like, though, doesn't it?
Your Wi-Fi did not go out because I can hear you.
Well,
Weird.
well, that is weird. How about this? I'll let you guys finish that, but there's a couple of more points that she'll make in this. There we go. There are a couple of more points she'll make, and one of the points she'll make is that this is where the Prophet Muhammad had his night journey. He ascended to heaven from this spot. So this has multiple reasons to be a holy place, as she pointed out, in all three of these major religions. And so I brought this. This is an old picture of the Dome of the Rock. And you can see this is in 1867. So yeah, it's 150 years old. And you can see it was kind of worn through the years. And what happened with it is that in late 1950s, I think from 59 to 61, this was a land that was, this part of Jerusalem actually had belonged to the Jordanians. It was part of Jordan. Now it's Israel. There's a lot of fighting, wars, things go on. But the king of Jordan refurbished the Dome of the Rock in 1959 and restored this impeccably. And what he did was have all of the tiles on the dome gold plated. So that's why you see this like this in this day, but that's a relatively new change. And you can see here, you can see this is the tiles and stuff, but sandstorms and things. Much, much more well kept in today's world. And so anyway, Dome of the Rock. And we're talking about that becomes one of the major, expressions, artistic expressions in the Muslim faith is the mosque. And we're going to see that too with Christianity and through the Gothic cathedrals and so on. But at any rate, This is a great mosque in Damascus, Syria. And see, there are tiles and mosaics, and as I said a moment ago, you might even on occasion see places, and in this case, you're seeing buildings. And you see a little village over here, but you don't see people. We're not doing graven images of people on a mosque. And so houses, trees, flora, and this magnificent geometric patterning. And that's really one of the hallmarks of Islamic art, is this kind of patterning, this mosaic. And here's a floor plan of mosque in Jordan. And here, this is, as you can see, it's not where it was supposed to be. It's in Berlin, as I said, many times. A lot of these countries come in, they dig things up and they send them home, whether it's Greece or whether it's Jordan or Syria. Here we are. And so floral patterns, geometric patterns, it's a wonderful combination, but not people. The Great Mosque in Tunisia, and you can see some of the dome structures and the courtyard, archways. Check this out. The minaret. I showed you the minarets on the Hagia Sophia. And these are minarets here at the Great Mosque in Damascus. Minarets, these long towers. But there's one from the Great Mosque in Samarra, Iraq. And it is like overwhelming. It's a spiral. It's huge. It's a minaret. As I was saying on Monday, this kind of architecture that connects the earth to the heavens. And so Uzbekistan, as I said, Islam moved way far east and a lot farther north. And I'm hoping this is Medina. This is my country. Yeah, that's correct. Yes, ma'am. And you can see, look at this brickwork. Look at how they put this together. This is functional. You need solid walls to hold up a building, but look at the patterning. Look at the masonry. Look at all of the complex geometry. And this is a mausoleum, by the way. It's not a mosque, but again, this is Islamic architecture. And as I say, you find elements of the more ancient cultures in Islamic architecture, in this case, especially the dome. And in this case, the archways on the top and the archway in the center. And this is the Great Mosque in Cordoba, Spain. And it was built in 8th to the 10th centuries. That's kind of why I showed you that map, as Spain as a former Muslim country. This was the most important mosque in Islamic Spain. And this is the inside, great prayer hall. And as I was telling you, they used the columns as part of the architecture. And they have, in this case, they have multiple archways. And again, like I was saying, that alternating pattern of light and dark through the archway. And this is very indicative of Islamic architecture. And in fact, this is one of the great examples of Islamic architecture. I hope this will run too. And I checked it out.
I think the Wi-Fi would fail again.
I hope
Just like
not.
it does.
What happens here should never dictate what happens here. As a nurse, I.
And let me see if my share is getting it.
Decisions. The heir that believes otherwise. His mandate may Missouri.
Skip that. I don't want to hear.
Say there's always been a foreign issue. These look orthodox.
You guys hear that?
Spain. The current government accuses the diocese of having claimed ownership of the temple. And supposedly.
Now, this is a YouTube video, but this is from RomeReports.com. This is from the Catholic hierarchy in Italy, just to say, and you'll see that UNESCO.
There is one unbelievably amazing site in Cordova that makes the trip more than worthwhile all by itself. La Mezquita, the great mosque. The building is most notable for its vast interior space with 856 columns made of jasper and onyx, marble, and granite. Entrance to the mosque is through a gate in the surrounding wall that leads into the vast outdoor patio courtyard. This patio of the Oranges traditionally served as the entry to the mosque and has the ablution fountains for cleansing of the faithful on their way in, with some elaborate irrigation, water channels, and beautiful fountains around. The peaceful garden setting is a transition for the worshipers from the daily world into the open space. We visited with a local guide who helped explain the significance and the history. The mosque was chosen the most important historic treasure of Spain, the major Spanish poll in 2007. When you walk in, you feel transported suddenly into another world, overwhelmed and fascinated, amazed and filled with wonder. There are
Okay, somehow I got onto the following website. It jumped from what I was showing you. So I'm going to go back here, because that was the tourist one. And this is what I wanted to show you. So hopefully I won't goof this up again.
Always been a foreign issue. Case of the mosque cathedral of Cordova. Was delicate topic in Spain. The current government accuses the diocese of having claimed ownership of the temple, and was supposedly state owned. Church would only be able to move to the mosque cathedral, but never to declare itself the owner. The diocese defends the ownership of the cathedral. In the 13th century, the king donated it to them. The Bishop of Cordova warns that in reality, there's much more at stake. The relationship with the Islamic world.
The Mosque Cathedral of Cordova's property title is in the name of the church after King Ferdinand III, himself donated. Furthermore, there is this document in the Islamic archive that details the donation of the cathedral to the Bishop and Church of Cordova. Once a basilica, King Ferdinand III ordered it to be consecrated as a cathedral. It is a symbol of the relationship with Islamic Christianity. There are those who are interested in making it not only a symbol of that relationship, but also a symbol of conflict.
The Mosque Cathedral of Cordova has a complex history. It began as a Christian affluent after the arrival of Muslims in Spain in the 8th century. The mosque was built over it. For the passing of the centuries, it was extended until it reached its maximum splendor. It was in the 10th century. At that time, it was only surpassed by Mecca. In the 13th century, Ferdinand III reconquered the city, and donated the majestic building to the church, who erected it again as a Christian temple. Now Muslim groups demand shared prayer so that both Christians and Muslims can use the temple. However, the Bishop of Córdoba is not convinced that's the right solution. He recalls that there are Catholic temples in the Muslim world that are in a very different situation.
The same Córdoba situation occurs only in Santa Sofia, that a Persian facility is now a museum, and has once been and can become again a mosque. For in Famagusta in Cyprus, also a great Gothic cathedral, has been converted into a mosque by facts of history and conquest.
Controversies such as the Mosque Cathedral of Córdoba can upset the relationship between Christianity and people. In recent decades, the dialogue between the two has undergone certain improvement. Much of this is
So this was one of the big things I wanted you guys to see. And we have leaders of Islam and of the Catholic Church, and the Pope has gotten everybody together to talk about this situation. The ownership, the authority, the purpose of the great mosque in Cordoba is in dispute. So that's really what's happening here and as we speak.
is that a book-based Sunni Imam of Al-Azhar, historic Muslim university where future Sunni imams are formed. Over the program's trip to Morocco in March 2019, they continue to foster a cordial atmosphere.
I love it. So there are multiple places around the world where a lot of things are in dispute. And in Jerusalem, you know, we just saw the Dome of the Rock, and it's a holy place for three major religions. And a lot of Jerusalem has holy places that are holy to all three different religions. So anyway, here's a detail of the facade, and you can see it's just like, just again, magnificent. Tile work, ornamentation, and typically not hardly a square inch is left without some kind of ornamentation. And this is an example of that, but this may have been, that may have been destroyed, but bottom line is, here's what we have. And there's the inside, we're talking about that. And while we were looking at that video, that tourist video, you could, if you were kind of watching out for it, you would see some of the quotations from the Quran on the wall of this. And so, like I said, this is like the height of Islamic architecture. They've done a lot of things since then and before then, but this is such a great example, and I think that's why it's so coveted. And so, mosque around the world is in Iran, domes, minarets. Mihrab, that's a place where you actually kind of go sit and pray. And this is kind of like what happens in a Christian cathedral or church, and even in some cases in Buddhist temples, you would have this place where you would pray. The difference being is that there's not a statue in here. In a Catholic church or a Christian church, typically you'd have a statue of the Virgin Mary or a crucifix or something. And in in Buddhism, you might actually have a statue of the Buddha in this kind of space. But this is a distinct difference in Islamic practice. And so I'm kind of short on time. This is a really good video. I'll give you a 2-minute summary. In this day that we're showing you, where the Grand Mosque of Cordoba was being built, these mosques all over from Tunisia and Iran and Iraq and so on. Europe was in relative chaos. After the fall of the Roman Empire, things got unorganized real quick. How many of you guys seen the movie Mad Max? Where you had this dystopian place after the nuclear apocalypse? You haven't seen it? Well, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was. When they had lost the central government, they lost a lot of things. And historians for a long time called this period in Europe the Dark Ages. And that is, and when we talk about medieval Europe, we'll go into that with more detail. But there was no such period in the Islamic world. As a matter of fact, in the Islamic world, culture persisted, knowledge persisted. In Islam, there are great universities and libraries that were established all through the Islamic world. And I don't know if you were paying attention when we showed the video on Cordoba, but there was the imam, and he was associated with one of the great Islamic universities. Knowledge, science, mathematics, a lot of things flourished in the Islamic world. And I would say that we end up seeing a lot of Arabic stuff. We still use this today in science and knowledge. How about algebra? What kind of word is that? Yes.
It's a word that starts with the beginning of the alphabet.
A. Okay. All right. Well, it's an Arabian term. It's an Arabic term. And it is about a different kind of way of doing math. And that is a way to find an unknown quantity when you got a couple of known values. That's what it is, you know. X plus blank equals 5. Whatever. You figure it out. And so anyway, but this all came about in Islamic times. And when we have the European Renaissance, a lot of what they know, especially in Renaissance Italy, is that they had cultural and economic ties to the Islamic world, despite the fact that the Europeans launched crusades on the Islamic world. Bottom line is that culture still flourished. And when it was like the MIT, it was like Caltech, it was like, it's where things were going on. And so anyway, that's what cross-cultural diffusion of knowledge, that's all I was saying, the economic, cultural ties to Europe. And so anyway, some more Islamic art. This is textile arts. It's a silk compound. Check this out.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Frog, that black, it looks kind of like a frog, with two legs, two
Well,
eyes and no arms.
I think it looks like a hinge to me, but you know.
It looks like it partially looks like a mammoth to me, kind of.
What you guys are looking about all this stuff, but look at the rest of this. This is incredible.
That.
This,
No, the thing below it, they're standing on those animals, those poor animals, those little
yeah.
headless creatures look like a turkey.
Oh, well,
That's what's up, traffic. A little bit above that.
check this out. Suleiman, a ewer in the form of a bird. This is brass. You know what a ewer is?
No.
Well, you are gonna hear about it. Just saying. A ewer is a container to hold water or liquid.
Wow.
And so what you would do is put your water in here and you could pour it out. And in this case, you would pour it out, come out of the beak.
Wow.
Yeah, a ewer is a pitcher. That's all it is. Not baseball, but a water pitcher. That's what a ewer is. But look at this. And I'll show you something else here too. I hope I got it. Here it is. Baptistry of St. Louis. And this is done in the Islamic world and it's circa 1300. And because the Islamic world was flourishing, when these Europeans wanted to have fine things to put in their cathedral, oftentimes they went to the Islamic world to have the artist, they had the means to create this kind of stuff. It was a lot, what we would call a lost art in most of what Europe was going through, but bottom line, gold, silver, it's not very tall, it's just a small little container like this. You baptize your babies with the holy water in this. And so I'm going to back up. A lot of what happens in Islam, as I was showing you, in the Dome of the Rock and in other places, they use script, language, words as part of the decorative element here. And in a lot of ways, Arabic script is in its own way what? Part of beautiful, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it lends itself to this kind of art, which in its own way is abstract. But here's some from the Blue Quran with gold and dyed vellum, which is vellum's a kind of paper. But you see, the language is part of it. Arabic proverb written around the perimeter of this plate. And so, yeah, here we go. Alhambra, Granada, Spain. We're still looking at right at the end of the Islamic rule over Spain, bottom line. Alhambra, Granada. Palace of the Lions. I'm going to show you where those lions are too. There they are back here. There's a fountain. Again, elements of antiquity, lots of script, lots of just intricate design. Attention to detail. And so let me I'm losing something here. Said the sharing has stopped. Where is share screen? Let's go here and share. And too many little things going on. Can't get out of YouTube. Excellent. There we go. I'll get to something here. All right. And let me make sure I got the share going. This is where we want to be. Okay, at home. This is quiz 3. I was going to launch this on Monday, but we kind of got a little bit behind on my schedule. But it says here, this is just a simple essay. Again, list your sources, and that's why I've been getting kind of, this doesn't have to be exclusively peer-reviewed sources. Just let me know where you got the stuff. Make sure that it is legit. So anyway, identify the image by the subject matter, size, medium, date, place of creation. You can find that. I'm sure you can. Describe the elements of the iconography. I had on Monday showed you a hot link to Christian iconography. So that'll be at least one source you will have, and support your answer with information gathered from the internet and textbook. Third, would you characterize this as ideal, naturalistic, symbolic, iconic? Why? And you tell me. And there's probably good answers for any of them, but I want you to back it up with evidence of what you're looking at here. So that is it. And here's an example. This is from a previous class, and I use this. And when we were talking about Byzantine art, this is where they standardized all of this iconography so that we would know who was Jesus. We showed you that early on, Jesus was depicted as the Good Shepherd, and he was young and he didn't have a beard. And then we start to see him as a beard, and we start to look at different issues of iconography here. In fact, I even talked about this one on Monday a little bit. You'll recall I talked about the receding hairline here. But this is a good answer to that same question. This is just a different example. And so there is significance on this. This is the fact that he's got the book, legitimizes the Bible, and it has everything to do with Christ was foretold in the Old Testament. God would send a Messiah. What's that symbol here? What's the hand gesture talking about?
Forgiveness.
What?
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, a pardon, a blessing. What about, yeah, different things, the halo, the colors, and so on. And that's obvious symbolism. So there's an example. Didn't really land on naturalism, realism, symbolism, except that symbolism was basically what that last paragraph is about. Ideal, naturalistic, or symbolic. That's a good example. That's what I want from you. And one last thing. Listing website sources. I have this hot link and it shows you how to list websites that you get information. And it says this is in the Chicago style, APA style. As I said, you can use Chicago. That's a really good one for what we have here. And that link goes to there and it says Scribber, but I got this off the Purdue University website, so it is legit. And what's your plagiarism? Whoa, that can be handy too. Free plagiarism check. And I get that too. That's how a lot of the documents that come through Canvas are safe scan. But so I hope you learned about, I hope you learned about a lot of stuff. I'm running out of time, which means if there are no questions, and even if there are questions, I want you to have a good weekend. So we'll see you then. Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Watching everybody go.